It's pretty crazy. I've been through a lot this week. I had some personal development. I had to go.
It's Ramsey Dewey, and I'm not in Shanghai, China. And welcome to this edition of Q&A with the coaches, because we got some additional coaches here.
Plural.
We got Sensei Seth, Icy Mike, and Rokas from the Martial Arts Journey channel. I got a question from William Pointer, long-time subscriber to the channel. And he's a martial artist. He's got his own school and so on. And I was initially going to ignore this question because I thought it sounded kind of silly. I thought it sounded kind of pointless, but I started thinking about it deeply. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to answer this one.
He's a long-time subscriber.
Yes.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
Yeah, I was kidding to him.
Yes, all right. So William's question was this. He's an older gentleman. He says, around the same time that Bruce Lee was developing Jeet Kune Do, I was developing a martial art as well. Now, I've seen some videos on his channel. He's a legit martial artist. He knows what he's doing. I've read comments that sound kind of similar to this, and it's just some goofy guy in their background.
Yeah,
That's the first.
That's probably what you were thinking, right?
Yeah.
You know, he knows how to strike, how to grapple.
Pause.
He's a legit martial artist.
I think I know him.
You do? Okay.
Well, wait. I'll let you finish.
Okay.
You can cut that part out.
All right.
You cut stuff out?
No.
Not usually.
No, we have to be very conscious of where we
if we say it, it goes in there.
Yeah,
so
okay. Let's do it.
Maybe.
Continue.
So mask your feelings. Seth. I mean, just...
Yeah.
All right. So around the same time that Bruce Lee was making Jeet Kune Do, I was developing a martial art as well. My system includes techniques from Taekwondo, Marquis of Queensberry boxing, 7-star praying mantis kung fu, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Although I have trained thousands of people, my system is listed nowhere. My question is, how do I get my system recognized in the community of martial arts? Rokas is doing that thing, and I understand why, because that's exactly how I felt when I first read this question.
Yeah.
It is very similar to MMA. Any help you can give me would be greatly appreciated by me and all my students. So, again, my initial reaction was this sounds like bullshito.
I'm not saying it's bullshit, but I have a different opinion. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can I start? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. It's just, for me, it's hard because we have these t-shirts and there's a sign here, probably not visible, like truth through combat. And for me, in the majority of my life, it's very, like, truth in martial arts is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was studying Aikido and then I decided to start expanding it, like make it functional initially, I was like asking tips for different experts, and a lot of them were like, oh, do some boxing, do some jiu-jitsu, then do this, and like add it to it. And then Nat Thornton was also a lot about truth and critical thinking. And I asked him for the same thing, like, how should I improve my Aikido? He's like, you should quit Aikido. And I was like, what? And that was my life, that was my business and everything. But I was like, tell me more. And then he said, like, life is too short. Why would you continue? And, I was like, this guy knows a lot of martial arts. So it's a different thing. But then Matt Thornton says another thing. It's, there's no Canadian geometry. Which is like, geometry is geometry. It's like MMA is MMA. It's like, my first impression is like, why do you need to create another style? And I don't know this person.
Yeah.
But my first, I'm tired, so maybe I'm just being like straightforward.
We're all tired.
This is the meanest I've ever seen. We've been beating each other up this whole week.
I'm actually getting worried because he's like just doing what I was here to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have to think of a new thing to do when it gets to me.
I'm just beating Edgeroke as well. I think I'll just finish up. It's like,
good.
I'm just thinking, I would question myself because I'm all about like, am I doing this for the right reason? I question myself all the time. So what I would question, like, why do I want to do this? Maybe, is it because this martial art is superior to others and the world needs it? And if the world needs it, it's very likely that it's going to get recognized. Like Bruce Lee, what he did was revolutionary, and it got recognized. Obviously, he was a great marketer, etc., etc., etc. But
And a movie star.
right? That made a big difference. But at the same time, the question is, am I doing it for me? Do I want it to be recognized because, like, oh, I want to look good? Or, okay, I shut up.
No.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm done.
You can boil it down to one word.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been through, and I'm sure you guys don't have to admit, but we've all probably thought about, I could start my own martial art.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I could
that's
give
what
out
I tried
belts.
with Aikido. Sure.
How many of you picked out a fancy Asian-sounding name for a martial art when you were younger?
Oh,
if I had access to, I probably would have.
Just me and Greg Jackson?
See, no, I think for me it was like a rad American.
Yeah.
For me, it was like how to make Aikido sound cooler and make it better.
So for mine, I wanted to put on the building North American street fighting and make that a martial art, like codify it and incorporate. Guess what? Elements of boxing, Taekwondo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling.
Kung Fu, praying mantis.
We have specific style of Kung Fu. So you've seen the guy move. You know that he is competent. He knows how to punch, knows how to kick, knows how to fight. Without even having seen it, Ramsey Dewey says you can, you can. Definitely believe that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us in the industry have sort of reached the opinion that, like, okay, then that's it. You know how to fight. You don't need another thing. Like, there's no gatekeepers anymore. And his concern doesn't sound like he wants people to come do his martial art. It's like he wants recognition for his martial art.
Yeah.
And he says things like, I've trained thousands of people. That's a lot of people. I've been doing this full time for a long time, and I don't think I've trained thousands of people.
Technically, we kind of have.
Like with seminars and everything.
No. Technically, we kind of have.
Right.
Because, what do you call trained? You know,
Yeah.
We've influenced.
Yeah, but that's
technique.
So if you truly trained thousands of people, you did create a martial art. You could just start handing out belts and people would recognize it if there were thousands of people out there that were really into what you were doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, maybe, showing someone a move one time, you could probably count. It's sort of like when people are listing their resume and they say, I trained with so-and-so, it means they went to their seminar one time. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm saying that a lot of times when people start looking for validation, they start saying things like that are just largely unnecessary.
Yeah.
You can never have trained with anyone famous and never have gotten a black belt in anything and never fought a professional fight or won a belt or won a trophy or even an amateur fight and still have some value to add. And people, if you show people what you have to offer and they like what they hear, they can train under you. That can still happen. Mm-hmm. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So if you're doing it, then that's it. You don't need recognition from some governing body or your system to be listed somewhere. Just the whole thing smacks of why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My first reaction was that it. So if you're going to create a system like some people have, just essentially meaning you put a name on how you teach stuff. Mm-hmm. I feel like it has to have something different or unique about it rather than just being a combined set of other martial arts. Because I think you kind of said it earlier, it's like MMA.
It's already a thing.
You look at some people's systems and they don't really focus on, it's not really a martial art. It's a specific way. So if not comparing the two of you, but you look at DKU and his system, it's a lot of just it's I don't know much about it, but from the outside it seems like 7 movements.
Yeah, move fist towards face, move foot towards knee.
And I feel like that's the kind of recognition he's looking for, to a degree. You know what I mean? Recognition of this thing. And I feel like if you're teaching that much stuff, it's a little too broad, maybe.
So
just to give him an answer. You know what I mean? I feel like it's too broad to be recognized as something unique. Lots of people take lots of martial arts. As far as teaching a bunch of them, lots of people teach a bunch of martial arts. It's hard to answer this without a lot of context.
Yeah, sure. So one thing this question made me think about was the origin stories of the most modern martial arts that we recognize. He mentioned Bruce Lee, and that's a fairly recent example. Back in the 60s, he started coming up with Jeet Kune Do, which, according to his own philosophy, isn't really a system or a style, but still, it is. Let's be honest. It is.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of I would say most traditional martial arts aren't really that old. Most of them are from the 1900s. If you look at Vo Vi Nam, the supposed Vietnamese traditional martial art, that's from the 2000s. That's when it was codified. Seriously. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it dates back to the 1920s or earlier as a separate style from Kodokan Judo or Kano Jiu-Jitsu as it was called back then. But how did that become popular? How did that become well known? How did that become a style? Because the Gracies beat some dudes up in their garage and then put on the UFC.
Yeah.
And beat some more dudes up on TV.
Yeah.
So what's what exactly is the point of having your own style, if you will?
Yeah.
So take for example Kung Fu. Okay, or Chinese traditional martial arts. There are over 400 different styles of hand-to-hand combat forms that are Chinese traditional martial arts we could call Kung Fu. And a lot of them have some really simple names like Hung Gar is the style of Wong Fei Hung. It's Wong Fei Hung's style, basically. And that's pretty simple. You can trace your lineage back to this guy who was supposedly really good. Kind of like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu goes back to Helio Gracie, right? Even some goofy things like Frank Dukes with his Dukes Ryu system. All that means is Dukes' school, with a Japanese word after it.
Yeah.
So that's really not that ambitious of a title for such ambitious of a man.
Bang Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a modern like martial art that was created by a person that's like young right now.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it just is doing things a little bit different.
Yeah, it comes from Bas Rutten, who he just beat people up in fights, and that's why people respect what he has to say.
Yeah.
And then they have a martial art.
So a lot of these popular styles are really just popular gyms that ended up being very successful.
People even.
Yeah.
Just literally just people, like DKU.
Yeah.
People.
Well, like we have a style. I'm sure the guys you train have a style. You can kind of sort of tell that that's a Ramsey Dewey guy.
Yeah.
Because Jeet Kune Do falls in that as well. Like it was based on a personality, and it still kind of is. It's like the martial art of Bruce Lee, and then even though they're all about like disregard what's doesn't work, whatever that thing, everybody knows that one.
Apparently not everyone.
Yeah, right.
You don't know it.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? So thank you. So, but the thing is, it's still a cult following. Like from what I see, not all Jeet Kune Do schools. Like it seems like there are exceptions, but they're just trying to be like Bruce Lee. So that's the style. It was his style, and they're like, oh, let's be like Bruce Lee. So it's about Bruce Lee. It's in most schools. It's not that much about disregard the things that don't work. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'll just continue your thought that it's a lot based on the personality versus...
Yeah, well, he said, you look at things people say, people tell you stuff that they don't mean to tell you. And he's like talking about, he makes sure that you know he's trained thousands of people. And actually, not to pick too much on your viewer here, it's largely unfair.
Yeah, right.
I think this conversation could be also pointed at any of us who have thought about creating our own martial art.
Right.
Yeah.
And my blanket answer is like, don't do that. Mostly because it's unnecessary. But you're exposing yourself to ridicule. You're just kind of asking to be dragged via the industry.
Mhm.
And you can very simply and easily show, if you know a way to make people better at fighting, it's very simple to do. You find a guy, you teach him how to fight, you put him in a ring, and then there it is.
Yeah.
And then that might be a fluke, so you do it again. And if you do it enough times and they win more often than they lose, you got a hell of a system and people will pay you.
Yeah.
But when he says, why is he not listed anywhere, and I was doing it at the same time as Bruce Lee, I think a lot of times we do things like this out of a sort of an insecurity. And it's just we need validation that we're good. And you're good. Like Ramsey Dewey said you're good. And I think Ramsey Dewey probably knows more about martial arts than any of us, and maybe us put together. Like, as you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
He's like literally a library. If Ramsey Dewey says you're good, then you know some stuff. So I think it's looking for validation in the external. It's unnecessary. It's a very simple process to prove that you have a martial art.
You know, I really went like edgy Rokas mode, but I think part of that is because
You really...
Well, it goes to home because it's not far off from what you've gone through, or any of us.
That's what I'm trying to say as well. It's like when you like do something. Can I swear? Like,
Go for it.
okay.
Whoa!
So when you
Whoa. We just got edgy in here, didn't we?
right, yeah, when you do something shitty, and then you feel embarrassed about it yourself, and then later somebody else is doing it, I find that I tend to judge that more.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you suck. You're doing that, and then I look
Because
it
you
up,
did.
and like, or even like maybe I was close to doing it. It was I wanted to, but I was like maybe like smart enough to do it, but it's still like
Still in there.
We were just
Right.
listening to old Rokas talk to young Rokas a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
Gollum and Smeagol having
Yeah.
a moment.
Right. Yeah. So because yeah. So
Do
maybe,
that again, sir. Do it again.
Again.
so so okay, I'm give up.
I want to reel back in us. Our initial. We're tired. We're cranky. We're old.
Yeah.
Most
And
of us are cranky,
We've
but-
been through a lot of things, and we've been through a lot of things you've been through. In fact, my journey very early on started because I kind of wanted validation from the martial arts community. I thought I needed people to co-sign that what I was teaching was legit,
Yeah.
and they didn't. They didn't.
Yeah.
You know, people were like, "No, you don't know what you're talking about." So I started producing fighters that were winning fights,
Mhm.
and they're like, but you don't know what you're talking about. And their opinion means nothing.
Yeah.
No one's opinion means anything other than the men and women whom you care for and lead and train, and that you serve and ultimately protect and enrich their lives. That's the opinions that matter.
Yeah.
Not even ours. You know, not even Ramsey's. Like, it is frustrating. I get that.
Yeah.
Because he genuinely feels like he can do some good.
Yeah.
But you don't need anyone to tell you to do that. That's kind of the beauty of the modern world. There's no gatekeepers. You know, people say, "Oh, we need governing bodies." They don't have them. You got YouTube and Instagram. Any idiot in the world can just start saying stuff, and then there's people that'll follow it and listen to it. And if it works out well for them, great. You don't need anybody to give you permission, authorization, or certification to pursue your passion.
But to be fair, he's asking how to get like this recognition for his style.
Train somebody.
Your solution
Or-
sounds like the most realistic one.
It
Train fighters
does.
which do well.
And that's a long, hard.
Yeah, like
Heartbreaking
very few
road.
people can do it.
I think another answer is to teach people publicly.
Mhm.
Like the eye of
Oh, if the market's Barrett, then it's real.
yeah, right. If the average viewer isn't really like it's not sitting well with them, then like there's your answer.
Yeah.
It's not going to reach a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same as fighting. Like it.
Are you suggesting you start a YouTube channel?
Yeah, probably.
I think you can give it a shot. It's
Yeah, I mean,
Well, you said he has one where he posts videos, but he's not. Is he not actively?
Not like regular, active, that
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that can be scary and intimidating and frustrating.
Yeah, for sure.
But then if you want your thing to be recognized and you believe it's worth it,
yeah,
then-
because you got to push it.
yeah, because I think that is troublesome when you're like, oh, everybody thinks it's crap. I know it's the best, but it's like if I'm not saying crap, I take it back.
Well, people will.
But if like everybody, nobody
like-
likes it.
Like Mike said, when you make up your own martial art, give it a name, especially an Asian sounding name, you do open yourself up to ridicule.
Yeah.
I mean, think like Greg Jackson, for example. Today everybody recognizes he's one of the top trainers. He's trained some of the best dudes who ever fought in the UFC. But when he started out, he was one of those goofy guys who picked a goofy Asian sounding name, Gaido Jitsu, which is a terrible translation for the way of the street in Japanese. Because he thought it sounded cool.
It does kind of sound
It
cool.
sounds more like guy.
Especially back in the
I could
the
be
late
wrong.
80s, early 90s, that era where it was like Van Damme movies were the stuff, man.
Yeah.
It seemed to lend it an air of legitimacy, but now if you did that, you couldn't get away with that. I mean,
Nah, you'd be ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet is the it's like the totality. Like it's gonna be the defining factor
Yeah,
for if it's gonna be well known or not.
yeah.
You can't like lurk in the shadows and like there's no underground anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll be ripped to shreds by the internet if you start a martial art.
Yeah.
Because the internet
matter
knows
what.
it's unnecessary. Even if this is probably where we can speak to anyone, even a person who knows, like, no, but mine's real.
Yeah.
Even if your martial art is awesome, if you just start it without any sort of proof of concept,
Mhm.
you will be ripped to shreds, and that will ultimately reduce your ability to help people.
Yeah.
Learn to fight, learn how to teach people to fight, teach some people to fight, and have them fight. And that's the way to start a martial art. And by the time you get that done, when you go like leave a system and then just learn to fight, or you'll find it's unnecessary.
You know, I'm also thinking it's just something that's interesting for me to realize as I'm listening to you guys talk. Like, so today I was looking at functional Aikido. And there's like some stuff which is kind of coming out, but then largely it's stuff which already works in other martial arts, etc. But there's like 20 years down the road, if I keep training, there may be like a significant amount. Let's say hypothetically, there's a significant amount of stuff that kind of works, or okay, let's say stuff that works, Aikido stuff, functional Aikido. I would be fine with calling it Aikido, but then I would be also in a difficult position because like it's not really Aikido anymore. It's not like really. I think people would have trouble calling it Aikido too. And
It's demon Aikido.
I think I'm being hypothetical now. Just feel free to disagree, but I think I would be forced to find a different name because it's just inconvenient to stick with that name. And it's like, okay, let's say it's like Aikido Do whatever. Like but I would be doing it not to be recognized, but it's like it's just
you can stick your name in front of it.
It's just happened. Does that make sense?
If you build a ship, I don't know if I could do it. And eventually, piece by piece, it falls apart, but you replace it with new pieces. Is it the same board, or is it the same ship, even after all the original pieces are replaced?
That's a good question. What makes a ship a ship?
This is waxing philosophical. Let's go back.
I was curious about your opinions, guys. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but like, do you see the dilemma behind it?
Yeah, I see
that
what
would
you're
be.
saying.
I think that would be evolution to me, to be honest.
We started with Rokas saying why.
Yeah.
And I think the guy's just barking up the wrong tree. All people who want recognition, like, especially as the instructor, if you're an instructor seeking recognition, it doesn't really make any sense. And a lot of us came up in systems where we like bowed to a picture of a dude. And I get reverence and respect for your instructor. If you taught me something, I would say thank you and I would revere you and respect you. But to want the world at large to know how great you are, it speaks about, I think, the motivation. I think the big hurdle you have to get over if you want to start a martial art is like, you're going to have to kill your own ego. And then once you do, you don't want to start a martial art anymore.
Yeah. It's not a thing.
As far as Rokas' question, so he taught a seminar today, showed some Aikido techniques as he was explaining, but modified. And it's different. It's not textbook. It's better. It's honestly better than what they might show you at the average dojo, right? So what do we call that?
Rokido.
Rokido. There we go. Perfect.
That sounds cool.
Perfect.
It does sound
It's
better.
better.
You know what?
Aikido
Let's just all start martial arts. Like, I'm just going to start.
Mike
martial
Kido, Seth Kido,
Seto.
Ramsey Kido,
Ramsey
Kido.
North American street fighting.
Mike Kido.
But at the same time, I taught some wrestling techniques, and I drew comparisons to Taiji movements and karate movements. And you can make what am I trying to say? I could try to sell that as this is weaponized Tai Chi for the streets or some nonsense like that. This is combat Tai Chi. A lot of people do that with martial arts that have a rap for being kind of wimpy and call it the combat. It's combat
Aikido.
Combat Aikido. Because we're not posers like those other guys. We're for real.
Yeah.
And that's never sat well with me.
Yeah.
But you could also say it's Aikido for MMA. There are all kinds of books written about various martial arts, karate for MMA, Taekwondo for MMA, capoeira for MMA. Look that up on YouTube. You'll find a video about it. Some guy trying to adapt their thing for
that
cage
sounds
fighting.
much more humble and reasonable too.
Yeah, it's just this style in the context of mixed martial arts.
It's not a new martial art. It's not like a different martial art. It's just adapted.
And people understand it's not going to be the traditional thing. There are going to be adaptations. It's going to be different, and it's going to work in that specific context. So I want to address the thousands of students thing. I don't know how many students I've had over the years because I haven't really tallied them up, but it's been a lot because Shanghai is a very international city, and a lot of people come in and move out. They come in, they move out. They come in, they move out, and I don't know if it's been more than 1,000, but it feels like it's been several hundred at least over the years. Hundreds of students have come in and left, and I don't say that as a big point of pride because it's sad that they just don't stick around that long. I've had a fairly small core group that sticks around. That being said, I had a student once who trained with me for about a year, and then he went back to his home province, He's a Chinese dude, and he opened up his own gym.
Mm. That was like from 0 to 1 year, and then it was cool.
But he was good though. He was a pro fighter. He had fighting experience before he came and trained with me.
Okay, so he did have experience
He
before.
wasn't just
It
like
sounded
some
like he
schmuck
trained
off
a
the
year
street.
and that was
He knew
it.
how to fight. He knew what he was doing. Trained with me, opened up his own gym, and gave it a name. It wasn't Ramsey Keto or anything like that. He said some nice words like, I credit my coach, Ramsey Dewey, awesome guy, and because of him, I'm opening up this gym. But it wasn't like, he didn't call it Ramsey style Kung Fu or whatever he was teaching over there. It was just, it's my gym. And I suppose different people might take that differently. They might be like, I want the glory, I want you to stick my name on it. It's Ramsey's brand, martial arts, or else. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't care. I was just happy that he had his own thing, that he opened up his gym, that he was spreading mixed martial arts in China, a country that didn't really have that thing. So, going back to Mike's question, why do you want the glory for yourself, or do you want to help people because you have something to offer?
The real question, because if they were the latter, the real question would be like, hey, how can I find more students? How can I let people more people know about what I'm doing?
Yeah,
so
I guarantee this guy doesn't have thousands of students right now.
Is he counting views or counting,
Guys who showed up to the gym, trained for a while.
Yeah, because they don't count for anything. I have a bunch of those. I wouldn't count them for anything.
So if I did that, I would say I have hundreds of students. You show up one of my classes, it's more like a dozen show up for any particular.
If I were to try to like prove like, oh, I have done blank blank blank, I'd be like, well, I had a pro fighter, won a good number of fights, and I had a few amateur fighters that won some titles, and I would list the guys that were with me for a long time that had some accomplishments. That would be how I'd say. I wouldn't say 600 different soccer moms walked through the door and I taught them all how to throw some pretty good punches. Like that, it counts for. If they're gone now, it counts. It doesn't count for anything. Other than the value you added to their life. So if that's what he's trying to do, then the real question, anyone that's thinking like, oh, I want recognition, I want my own martial art. The question you should ask is, how do I serve more people? Because ultimately, that's the thing. I think that the dynamic that is not as understood in martial arts, where we serve our people. They don't serve us. That we're not there. We're not in charge of them. A leader is a servant of the people that he leads, not the other way around.
Here's maybe one more question, because you guys are tired. It's been a long day, right? But does the name of a martial art matter? Does it matter that there's boxing, jiu-jitsu, etc.? Money? Okay, sure. And is there room for another one? Is there room for like another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu type of thing?
There definitely is.
Okay.
I think the only time the name really matters is when it's associated with a rule set. That's really the only time that it matters. So like the boxing, jiu-jitsu, that's just like a type of competition, really.
Yeah.
Because I could put boxing on the top of a school, and then when you come in, it's just like high-fiving each other, and if nobody knows any different, then it's the same thing. Until you compete against other people, and there's rules, and I think there is room for more. I mean, obviously there is. People are slapping each other for competition.
That's why there's I keep hearing more and more stories about schools where they say like they teach Muay Thai, but it's like just kickboxing.
It's most MMA schools. They put Muay Thai on the building, but they just punch and kick in there. Same. They put boxing. They'll put boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, BJJ, MMA on the around their logo.
There's a class where they only punch, a class where they punch and kick, but don't know anything about clinch fighting, sweep, strips, etc., and a class where they grapple.
Yep. The punching class we took. To be intellectually honest, my schedule used to say boxing on it. And I took boxing off of it. We were practicing boxing, and we're actually, as far as we go, we were boxing more than other places. I just called it striking fundamentals, because usually boxing class at a gym is class where they just punch, which is not boxing. But that's a video for another time.
I like that, striking fundamentals, because if you call it kickboxing, especially if your gym is geared toward MMA fighters.
Yeah.
Because if you call it kickboxing or boxing, you feel constrained to the rule set. Yes, exactly, and you don't take grappling into consideration, for example. There was a great small gym a friend of mine in Southern California runs. It's a small gym, but it's one of the most brilliant structures I've ever seen for an MMA gym, when they train stand-up fighting, they call it the stand-up game, they include the takedowns in that. They don't grapple on the ground. It's kind of like Sanda, the way they do it.
Like shoot boxing.
Yeah. So their grappling always has to, or their striking always has to reflect the legitimate fear of a takedown, has to reflect what happens if the dude clinches with you, tries to throw you, traps you, etc. And that's beautiful. You don't get that from a traditional boxing class or a kickboxing class or even a Muay Thai class.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a way, that itself could be a style.
Yeah.
It is a rule set of sorts.
Yeah.
So, hey man, should we give that a name?
What?
That thing, that striking fundamental. Mike gave it a name. He just did.
Yeah.
Striking fundamentals
Yeah.
for mixed martial arts.
Hitting a person
Hitting a person
with stuff
when they
on your
might
body.
take you down.
Yeah, and not getting hit.
Yeah.
Good thing.
So it seems like the consensus is we don't really need to overcomplicate these things with names and styles and glory.
Yeah.
I made a video years ago called "I Am Not a Belt," and because people always ask me, "What belt are you in? Whatever martial art?" And I'm like, "I'm not a belt. I'm a person. I have a number of different belts in a number of different martial arts, and I don't care. You never see me wear them in my videos, with very few exceptions. Why? Because I don't care. Because those belts don't give me power. Those belts don't give me. They don't make me special. There are like a handful of dudes out there who even care, and there are a lot more guys who are really suspicious, and they're like, "Who gave you that belt? Trace your lineage for me." And I hate that. I want to punch you in the face, but still.
The people that want the qualifications, you'll never have enough for them to be happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
What's his name? William?
William.
Do you think William knew we were all going to answer this? Or do you
Man.
think William thought
yeah.
just you were going to
I
I
answer
don't
just-
this?
think he did. But
I just hope he understands the place where we're coming from,
Yeah,
which is
we're
a
coming-
place that we all been through this
Right.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely like a harsh start, but hopefully William made it all the way to this point.
I hope so. He seems
Or-
like a good dude.
Or anyone, and
Seems
there's
like his
more
heart's in the
people
right
that
place.
there's more people
Yeah,
that are in
There's
this
a lot of
situation.
people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like if you call this video like, should I start a martial art? I think a lot of people are gonna watch this because a lot of people have that.
Title it, do not start your own
Okay.
martial art.
And I know people who started their own martial art, like legit martial artists, giving it a goofy sounding Asian name, and they have skills. No one takes them seriously, and they ask me questions like, "Well, what do I do to make people take me seriously?" And the question is, "Well, why do you want them to take you
Don't
seriously?"
ask him to.
That
And-
never. It's gonna
And
be a try
it
hard.
comes back to,
Try
well,
hard.
I feel like if I fought in an MMA fight or if I did a pro fight, they'd respect me, but I don't feel the need to do that.
It's kind of
And-
Finding yourself in a quandary there.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Everybody should train. Not everybody needs to fight. Hmm.
We're just going to go up one each.
All right, guys. I think that's about all we can say about this without circling back. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and
And train.